I'm Jamie Hill, the editor of Swindon Link magazine, and I'll be talking to Deputy Leader Russell Holland about this year's rising council tax. We've asked the people of Swindon to provide us with some questions, and they've definitely risen to the occasion. So, Russell, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Well, I mean, just to get a bit of background about yourself, tell me, how long have you been involved in politics?
I first got elected in 2007. I did run for election before then. I'm very much proud to be Swindon born and bred, and what got me into politics is that I've always been into public service, volunteering and things, and I always think that you quite often hear a lot of people complaining about different things, and I've always thought, well, if you think you can do a better job, you should give it a try yourself. So I think that's kind of my mindset of things. It's all about trying to see how we can improve things.
Excellent, excellent. So you're here to do a better job, which is always good to hear.
Hopefully, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
And how's the pandemic itself been affecting you personally? You know, how's lockdown gone with the family? Are you going a bit stir crazy, or are you still out and about?
I think it's been very challenging for everyone. I mean, on the council, the main change has been the switch from live in-person meetings to meetings more like this. So, which I think in some ways has been good because it makes it easier for people to join in, whereas before they've had to travel in. So being able to participate from home is good. My professional life, I'm a barrister by profession. Court hearings have been going online as well, so that's also been a change. So yeah, just been trying to keep things going really. Obviously trying to get some exercise. The other thing I've rediscovered during lockdown is what a great cycling network we have in Swindon, because I'm not the most confident cyclist in the world, so I've been a bit hesitant to go out because of the roads, but it's amazing how far you can get around Swindon without having to cycle on the roads at all. So I have rediscovered the cycle network too, so I have enjoyed that.
Even keeping fit, brilliant, but also getting very used to saying to other people, "You're still on mute." Yeah. So let's get into it a bit. So just explain to us, what is the council tax rise this year?
So the council tax increase has two elements. The first is, if you like, the general council tax. That is just under 2%. And in addition, what the government has done is given the council power to raise money specifically to provide for adult social care. So that is 3%. So the total figure for the council is 4.99%. Now, when people receive their council tax bills, the council does collect money on behalf of other, the expression uses precepting authorities. So we do collect money on behalf of the Police and Crime Commissioner, the Fire Authority, and the parish councils as well. So for the council, it's the just under 2% for general spending, then the 3% specifically for adult social care. So 4.99% in total.
Okay, and so why such a rise? I know you've just broken it down a bit, but yeah, that is the maximum you can do. Obviously, a lot of people have been suffering in the last in the last 12 months or so. So with people taking a 20% wage cut if they're on furlough, etc., and lots of people out of work. Why are we seeing the maximum rise that we can see in a hard time?
Yeah, we are very conscious of the impact of any increase in council tax. Swindon is lower than the average, which I appreciate may not be much consolation for some people. We are looking on average an additional £5.92 a week. So we are very conscious of the impact on that. We've done a lot of work to try to help people on lower incomes to try to avoid them getting into difficulties with the paying to council tax. I think the basic issue with council tax is that most people don't see where most of their money is spent. For most people, the main service you will see is having your bins collected. It's hard to give an exact figure because the number of people receiving services will change, but over 80% of about 80% of our budget is spent on people with social care needs and vulnerable children. So this means 80% of our budget in reality is probably spent on less than 10% of the population. And I think it's really important to be clear, because sometimes when people hear the expression vulnerable people. They may have some of these TV documentaries they may have seen in mind about people on benefits and some of those negative stereotypes. Now, I think those are unhelpful generally, but it's really important to emphasise is that what we're talking about is people with serious needs. So people who cannot toilet themselves, people who could not live independently, children who will not be in clean clothes, or worse yet, will have been victims of or witnessed serious domestic violence, or where drug and alcohol is a problem in the home. So if you've had if I use the word typical upbringing, the type of issues that the social workers have to deal with, they will be outside your experience, but that is where most of the money is going to be spent. And the reason for the increase is that we have more people living for longer with more complex health conditions, and that has costs. So what we're seeing with adult social care is symptomatic of one of the issues we have with an ageing society. Now, at one level, you could think, well, that's a great problem to have, because what that means is that because of improved health, people who years ago may have just died and not had lived so long, they're now alive. That's great. But what it does mean is that there are costs with that, and we need to have I think as a society, a more evidence-based, wider conversation about what type of society do we want to live in, and how much are we prepared to pay for that. And really, the increase in council tax is symptomatic of that wider issue.
Okay. So I mean, obviously, this means that other facilities and other things that the services that the council provides suffer because of it, because you've got this rising social care cost every year. So I mean, are you guys at the council doing anything about this? As it means that for council taxpayers, we're paying more year on year for less. So are you lobbying the government, for instance, for a bigger grant, or are there other ways of getting funding in to kind of help with this?
I totally understand why people feel they're paying more for less, and I think the way I would put it is you're paying more to help more people who you just probably won't come into contact with. But I appreciate that means that visibly some of the services have changed, so that's why people would feel that way. Now, in terms of what do we do with the government, I think it's fair to say that historically governments of both political persuasions have not yet got a solution to this. But yes, we do lobby the government, and indeed the government has provided some additional funding. We got some one-off funding this year, but one-off funding is great to have, but if you don't have it next year, you then have to budget for how you're going to have that additional funding for the next year. But I think what I really want to get across is that if more money is needed, then that has to come from somewhere. So if the government tomorrow said we're going to take care of the funding of adult social care, that inevitably would lead to an increase in tax. So this is why it comes back to the idea of fairness, because council tax, it's something of a blunt instrument. People, it may or may not be linked to how much people are taking home, whereas of course income tax is a more progressive tax. So as we know, in the 2017 election, there were some proposals from the Conservatives around how adult social care might be paid for, which were not universally received with great enthusiasm, if I put it that way. But it is one of those things we do have to, as a country, get to grips with how we're going to deal with this. And I think in order to do that, we've got to change and reflect on our attitudes about taxation more widely.
Okay, I mean, obviously it's been a difficult year financially for everybody, but how has the pandemic affected the council finances themselves?
Yeah, so the council finances were significantly affected, and partway through the year, I have been cabinet finance for eight years now, I think, and it was the first time I was seriously worried, are we going to get through this? Because we've always had challenges arising out of the government reducing the grant and the adult social care, but I could always see a way through. Now, what the government said it would do, and it did, was to stabilise council finances. So the council finances are impacted in two main ways. The first was that we had to spend money on things that we weren't spending on money before. So that was primarily through within the care homes, the organisations we contract with to provide care, they needed more money to be spent on PPE. they needed additional funding. So if you like, there was actual money being spent on actual things, so an increased cost. And the second impact was that, of course, with lockdown, people couldn't go to the museum, so no car parking was down, so we lost income as well. Now the government has stepped in to provide funding, and it has stabilised the system. I think that the issue we've got now is that we do not yet know what impact is long COVID going to have on demand for healthcare, and of course there are going to be wider questions about how quickly the economic recovery takes place. So we're already in a challenging situation, which became more challenging, but the additional government funding did allow things to be stabilised, but challenges still remain.
So, I mean, we've got a council tax rise of 4.99%, the maximum that you can do. I mean, is that enough? Is there, is that going to actually, are you still going to be able to do everything that you need to do, especially with the problems from the pandemic? I mean, should you maybe look at holding a public vote to raise it even higher than that, so we can pay for everything? I know when it goes over that maximum, it needs to go to us to actually decide. But shouldn't we be looking at something like that to actually kind of fill in those funding gaps in Swindon, so things don't suffer?
It is a judgment call as to whether or not you would want to go to the people of Swindon and say, look, we'd like to have a vote whereby you will pay more than 4.99%. It's not something that's ever been proposed by any council of any political party, and I think there may have been one referendum in the country in all this time. So I don't think it's something people would want to vote for. And I think, given that the government allowed us to have the additional income from the adult social care precept, a referendum isn't something I'd recommend. I think, though, in terms of your question, can we provide the services? Yes, we can, but of course we have to cut our cloth, as it were, based on the money that we have. So I don't think a referendum is likely to lead to most people wanting to increase tax, but that's why I think that we do need to carry on the public narrative, which is why we're very grateful to do things like this. It's to getting the message out there as to what we're actually spending the money on, because too often council tax debates or any tax debates are, oh, I don't want to pay more tax. And we hear expressions about the squeezed middle and similar things. I've worked hard, why should I pay tax? And on it goes. But it does come back to, well, what type of society do we want to live in? There was a time when we didn't have universal healthcare and education and so on, where government spending was very, very little. But I don't think anybody would want to go back to that time. But it does mean we have to think about what our attitudes are towards an aging population. Because if you think about the NHS, most people, thank goodness, will never get cancer. So it means we spend a lot of money helping a comparatively small number of people, but nobody has a problem with that. We just completely accept that. But you don't see the bill for that in your council tax. You see it on your payslip. But of course, the money you take home on your payslip, you may or may not particularly think about what's been deducted. Whereas with your council tax, it is another bill to be paid. So you probably feel about it differently. Whereas if that money was deducted from your payslip, you might have a different attitude about it.
Okay. I mean, there has been a report out this week that 25 councils in the UK are at high or acute risk of financial failure. Is Swindon Borough Council one of them? And actually, what is the state of the Borough Council's finances? Are we okay?
The answer is yes, we are okay. Every single year we have produced a balanced budget. So we come in on budget, or occasionally, if we've been able to deliver some savings early, we've had a very, very slight underspend. But every year, when we're thinking about how many reserves we keep and our contingencies and so on, it does get a little bit tighter. So I am confident that the council is financially stable. As I say, there was a point mid-year when this was all playing out where for the first time ever I have been worried about that. But what it does mean is that we need to continue to make decisions, which will be difficult decisions and not always popular decisions, in order to keep us in that position. Now, what we have been told is that there is an intention on the part of the government to publish a white paper on adult social care, but being realistic, whatever the government proposals, it might be we're paying more income tax, or whatever form that comes. But that's why I keep making the point that people might say, well, shouldn't the central government do it? Okay, well, that means that we're paying more in other forms of tax rather than council tax. Now, that might be fairer, but it's still an increase in tax.
Okay. I mean, we're now getting on to some questions from the public.
Yeah.
So I've got some here about the town centre actually to start with. Always something that the people of Swindon want to talk about. Yeah. So I've got three questions here about the town centre. I'm going to read them out at once, and then you can go through them rather than doing individual questions. So this is from Chris. He asks, your vision, priority 3 and pledge 16 talks about improving the town centre in various ways. A walkthrough this week suggests you have made zero progress, even to the extent of going backwards. What are you going to do about achieving this goal, and by when? We've then had a question from Max Hale. He's asked, why have you allowed the town centre to become derelict? It's a disgrace to have 54 empty retail premises. It looks a total dump. What are you doing about this? And finally, I mean, they're all essentially the same question. Finally, why are you putting rates up? This is from Phil. Why are you putting rates up when there are people losing their jobs and are struggling to put food on the table? With the amount of new houses being built, surely the rates these bring in are more than enough to cover other shortfalls. Why update the bus station? There won't be any shops left in the town centre, so no need for buses for people to travel on. That's from Phil. So that's 3 questions grouped. Yeah,
I'll perhaps take the last one first, because that maybe deals with the theme, as it were. So I think I've set out the reasons why it's been necessary to put the council tax up. Now, of course, new housing growth does bring additional revenue. Of course, it does, but it also brings additional expenditure, because there are more bins to be collected, school admissions to be processed, and on it goes. But to deal with the key point, which is the town centre, I mentioned before, I'm Swindon born and bred myself, and some of my early memories are cycling into the town centre. And I don't know, how long have you been in Swindon for, Jamie?
I was born in Swindon, but
yeah. So I remember going to BT's to get my Star Wars toys right. in the 80s, and we got a piano from Duxon and Pinker and sheet music, and everybody inevitably remembers McIlroy's. And another one of my favourite town centre memories, there was a chap who used to sell the advert, and he used to kind of say, yep. I don't you remember?
Yeah, I loved him.
So of course, when you think back to that and how it is today, I think I have to both acknowledge and share the concerns and disappointment about the pace of change, and I would recognise that, and I think we have to recognise that. And I think what I would say is that yes, the pace of change has not been what we would have wanted, but progress is being made. Now, of course, people may well make the point, well, you promised different things before. But I think there's a couple of points. Town centres generally are not what they used to be. Of course, when we were getting toys in beaties, there wasn't an internet. It was completely different. So things like internet shopping have changed the nature of the high street. Out of town shopping centres have changed the nature of the high street. So business rates is another issue that comes up the high street. So there's a whole host of reasons why the high streets have changed. Now, in respect of what the council is doing, well, one concrete, no pun intended, example of what we've got, the big crane is there to be seen, is the new building at Kimmerfields by Zurich. And this is particularly good because that is a really good, credible anchor tenant, which will encourage others to come forward. But also, one of the things I've been doing as a councillor is asking can we use our resources in a more commercial way? So we have invested a lot of money in acquiring commercial property, and in total, after interest costs, that's generating over £1 million in revenue for the council. So in the case of the Zurich building, we're doing a leaseback scheme, so we will make money from that, and it's a key investment in Swindon. So that is extremely positive. The bus boulevard, I think, probably, again, most of us who grew up in Swindon, we probably just talk about an improved bus station. But that is going to be a big change, because it's one of those things that changes to the built environment are the hardest to change, just because of the nature of them, the costs and so on. But it's one of those things you have to start somewhere, and I think an improved bus station, an improved area there will be better. We have the new hotel coming up on the Aspen site. So there are reasons to be optimistic. There are reasons to be cheerful, but I think all of us have to acknowledge that the pace of change is not what we wanted. But I can say absolutely confidently, particularly for my colleagues David Renard and Dale Heenan, they're absolutely going for it. And just last week in the budget, we had the announcement of the 19.5 million for the new towns fund. So again, that there are reasons to be cheerful, but the scale of the change required, it is going to take time, and there are forces other than what the council can do. So I think we are doing everything we can, but I think, you know, we have to acknowledge some of the people's feelings about this. But I can only provide assurance that things are happening, and as I say, the crane on Kimmerfields, it's there to be seen, and that will make money for the council too.
I mean, is there an overall plan for the town centre? I mean, we've got these separate things like Kimmerfields, you've got the cultural quarter, which might actually end up being in Kimmerfields, and we've got different ideas of things that are going on in different points in the town centre. But, you know, the retail is massively being attacked at the moment, you know, by the internet, by the pandemic. So, you know, wouldn't it be a good idea to actually shrink that footprint of the actual retail units? Yeah. And have more residential around the town centre to, you know, have more people living there to use the retail and the cafes and the restaurants there.
Yeah, I think that's a really important public debate and public discussion that we need to have. And I think that we do need to be realistic about the future for all the reasons you just outlined. So I think that may well be the appropriate way forward. But say that there are positive things going on, and it's something we've got to continue to work on, because the other thing is, with the pandemic, we don't quite know what the post-COVID landscape is going to look like. So for, as you said, for retail, but again, I think it's one of those things that you know, it's so easy, particularly on lockdown, just to go online and buy something. So I think for those of us who want to see an improved town centre, we have got to go and use it. And I appreciate, because of lockdown, that's been different. But if you can ever find a local seller, use it. And if you've been to a local business, you know, give it a positive review on Facebook or social media. Tell people. I think one of the things about Swindonians is that I don't know, we kind of love to knock our town sometimes. That's kind of part of what we do. And I think it's important that we try to accentuate the positive a bit more, and where we have had really good customer service, say so. You can find a local business, use it and promote it and publicise it, because, you know, we're not exactly going to inspire people to want to come and invest if we have a negative narrative. Now, it doesn't mean we kind of close our eyes to all the problems, but I just think accentuating the positive is something that we can all do, and that is something that will help. But crucially, you know, if you can, go and buy things. Of course, when lockdown restrictions start to be lifted, that's something that will be far easier for us to do.
Okay, I mean, yeah, but you spoke about how the Swindonians' attitude, how you know, there's a lot of cynical people here. You know, there's been lots of projects that have been mooted. You know, New Swindon Company, Forward Swindon, and all these big things that were going to happen that never actually happened. One of the big things at the moment that's in the news is the Oasis. So, I mean, yeah, can you basically tell me what is happening about the Oasis at the moment? Severn Capital had massive plans to create the snow oasis, and has all that fallen by the wayside now, or are these plans still in play? And as a council, are you going to be doing everything you can to ensure that this hugely important community facility does not remain closed? And the town, the town is crying out for the council to have that vision and courage to actually make sure that we have this. People used to travel for miles to go to the Oasis. Yeah. I've been there since I was a kid, and it'd be so sad for Swindon to lose such an amazing facility.
I'm sure we all have memories when we first went down the Dome Busters. I think the white one in the middle, I think it's called the Great White. That's right, and then Waverley and everything else. So yes, of course, we all have fond memories of that, and that's something I recognise. I think that it is an older building now. Of course, when it was first opened, it was state of the art. I just want to kind of briefly take a little step back as to where we're at and how we got there. So it's precisely because the council knew that we were facing financial challenges over coming years that we decided to outsource leisure, because the goal was that if it was in the part of the private sector, that there would be greater opportunities for innovation and investment that would have been had it simply remained with the council. And that's the reason why that was the policy objective, to do that. Now, in the case of the Oasis and North Star site specifically, the goal was to bring the Snow Dome to Swindon. There's numerous. You can draw a circle around Swindon, and our location means that we are ideal for a regional leisure opportunity. Now, for various reasons around getting the funding and so on and so forth, that was delayed, and Seven Capital have taken that on. Now, very disappointingly, we were in February this year, we were getting very good news about businesses wanting to get the pre-lets for the Snow Dome and everything else, and everything was looking extremely positive. So after all these years of waiting, things were in a very positive place. Then we're hit with COVID, which has had of course a massively negative impact on the leisure industry. So COVID is very much the main reason behind that. I think it's fair to say it's not the only reason. There were some delays with funding and the like in the run up to that, but big projects of this nature take time. So where we're at with the Oasis is that it is the council's expectation and goal that Seven Capital will be working to bring forward a new provider. There's a lot of work and a lot of activity going on at the moment. Again, my colleagues, particularly David, Renard and Dale Heenan, are working on that. But we can't talk a lot about the detail of it because the commercially sensitive nature of it. But if I think I can appropriately put it this way, the policy goal is to have the Oasis and to have the regional attraction. But COVID has been a massive setback to that. Also, at the same time that this was all happening, we didn't have a Brexit deal, which also generated uncertainty for investors. So there were challenges on both those accounts. So where we're at the moment, what the Cabinet have said, and this is something I proposed in the budget, that we have allocated £5 million, which could be used, and I've always been clear it could be used as part of a recovery. Now, what we haven't said is that we're just going to go and spend £5 million on the Oasis, regardless of its future, regardless of any business plan, because I don't think that's the right way to go, because we don't want to invest £5 million unless it's part of a plan. Now, in all probability, the way this could work is that if there is housing development nearby, then that will generate the money which could then go towards the Oasis. And the way this £5 million could potentially be used would be as a bridging fund, but we can't just borrow £5 million without knowing how that could be paid for and securing the council's finances. And this is one of the things that was debated at full council. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but I think what's fair to say is that all councillors of all political parties are united in their desire to do something for the Oasis. It's the route we take to get there.
Okay. So the actual, I mean, one of the things that have Severn Capital made clear to you whether their big regional entertainment facilities are still on the agenda, or is everything being scaled down a bit now? Any indication at all on that?
Yeah, I think what I can appropriately share is that Severn Capital have put a lot of money already into this scheme, into getting it ready, and of course they want to get the best possible results. So the aspiration is there and the desire is there. It's how everything is now looked at again in light of COVID, but the ambition remains the same. But it has taken inevitably an extremely bad hit because of COVID and leisure. So there's a lot of work's taking place. I'm hoping we'll be able to say a little bit more publicly, before too long, if I put it that way.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So, I mean, we're getting on to the kind of the roads and the potholes question now. So, I mean, first of all, I've got a question here from Manveer Dillon. It's a very specific question. He's a resident in Mustang Way.
Yeah.
He has an issue with the way the council wastes money. At the beginning of 2020, the council had new traffic lights installed next to the Malden View estate, which is at the bottom of the dip near Sparcells, which is a dangerous estate to be pulling out of in the car. Not to mention trying to cross as other car drivers drive at high speed on the main road at peak times. So his question is, why did the council not have the traffic lights located at the Mustang Way junction to make it safer for the parents and kids, as well as the cars who want to come out of the estate at peak times, and rather than where they've actually located it? Does that make sense?
Now, I totally understand this, because it can be tricky getting out in and out of the estate. Now, strangely, you may think Mustang Way itself actually does sit within Wiltshire County Council. So there is it's hard to describe it. There's like a little almost U for that estate, which puts it within Wiltshire rather than Swindon. I was surprised to learn that myself, because when you look at the boundary map, you think, well, why is that? So I am sympathetic to that. We as a council, of course, we do work with our partners. I'm not trying to blame someone else. That where there is a crossing, it is designed to be in line with a path that gives access to Mead Way. So these things are reviewed on an annual basis. So I think for Manveer, it would be good to put those concerns to probably his Wiltshire councillor, and then they can be raised and we can liaise and keep that under review.
Okay, and I've got another question here. This is from Edward Harrison. So for some weeks now, we have had one contractor working in Haydenwick laying new power cables to Holmley, Cloverlands and other roads in the area, then filling in and making good. Then along comes another contractor digging up, in some cases, the same areas and laying fibre optic broadband cable. Surely it is not beyond the bounds of efficiency for someone in the council to coordinate these contractors to use the same trench for both services and create less mess.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think I said earlier about accentuating the positive. The great positive here is that businesses are investing in Swindon, which will improve our network capacity. City Fibre has got a £40 million investment fund, which is great news. And of course, when you have different businesses operating in an area, that means there is competition, which is good for consumers. The key point that he's making there, which I agree with, is how we can coordinate. Now, coordination does take place. I know that some people may perhaps be smiling as I say that, but it does. And we did recently bring a report to Cabinet about having a permit scheme which continues to help to do that. But fundamentally, where you have private businesses wishing to do particular works, particular areas, we can't necessarily say no to that. But I totally take the point, and I say it does happen. I think some of those things we need to keep working on. let's say the good news is that a lot of different businesses want to invest in our IT capacity, which in turn will help grow the economy and help people more widely.
Russell, as you'd expect, we've had several questions in from our readers which relate to everyone's favourite topic, potholes.
Yeah.
When we put out this thing asking for questions, this was the biggest response was potholes. So Jan Hall contacted us to say that the potholes in Pinehurst Road are getting bad again. She wants to know if it would be more cost effective to re-tarmac the whole road surface instead of doing temporary repairs. Mike Panar made the same point about crumbling road surfaces in Highworth, and Simon said the poor road conditions in Swindon are not acceptable. That's his words, not mine. Marie Baldwin wants to know when the many potholes near Swindon Designer Outlet will be fixed. And Edward Harrison, who was just asking about fibre optic broadband up there, says he was raised the poor state of the roads in Homley and Cloverlands in Haydenwick with your cabinet colleague David Reddard, but he has been told a lack of finance means the roads can't be resurfaced. So how would you respond to residents who are concerned about the state of Swindon's roads?
Yeah, look, I acknowledge those and I share those, but at the same time, I do have to be really realistic. It does come down to money. We have responsibility for, I think, over 500 miles of roads. Last year, I think we filled in 5,800 potholes. The government has given us some additional money, which we will of course welcome, and we will put towards potholes. I think I can say we are going as quickly as we can. Now, some of the wider questions about, well, look, should you do a full resurface or should you do a temporary job? But a full resurface will cost a lot more money, which will limit the ability to do other fill-ins. So as councillor for Stratton and South Marston, I've been having this debate constantly over the White Hart roundabout, and I've been I wouldn't say hounding, but I've certainly been talking to officers a lot, because part of the goal was not to do some of those potholes because it was going to be resurfaced, but they got so bad that I did request an emergency review, and it was done. But I think the key thing to say on the potholes is report them. They do have to be reported so they can then get on the system. There is an inspections team, but as I say, that the number of people compared to the number of roads means this is inevitably limited, and that there's a helpful Q&A on potholes as to how we do the filling in and so forth around the technical questions. I can only say it's getting that judgment call as to trying to do the greatest number we can within the resources that we have. But again, if you think about how much we pay in road tax and on it goes, if we want more to be done, they do need to be open to paying perhaps more in road tax to help to cover that. And also, this is not an issue unique to Swindon. Before lockdown, I would do some travel in the course of my work, and it is a wider issue. So I think I can both empathise and sympathise with those views, but I can only provide reassurance that we do the very best we can on that.
So people just need to go to the Swindon Council website to
So if you just Google Swindon Borough Council report a pothole or pothole Q&As, or you can contact your local councillor who can then log it. They will be looked at. They will be inspected.
Is there a certain depth they need to be before they're kind of?
Yeah, I mean, in my legal work, I haven't done one of these cases for a while, but I have done court cases where you have two lawyers and a judge all staring at photographs of potholes with a ruler in them, or 2p coins next to them, and the judge needs to try to work out whether or not he thinks it's dangerous. So there are some rules and guidance around that, but it does really need to be done on a safety basis. Of course, if you have a much bigger hole that suddenly emerges that is more likely to cause an accident, then that would need to get priority over smaller ones that aren't as bad. So that is how those things work.
So I mean, just moving on to kind of litter, another thing that is close to the heart of a lot of people in Swindon. So I've got a couple of questions here pertaining to this. This is one from Carol. Please, when is all the litter in the bushes and verges going to be picked? E.g. Great Western Way in Queen's Drive. It is unsightly, attracts vermin, and gives an exceedingly poor impression of the town. And then we have one from Brian, who's said, my question. Every week in Swindon, criminals are sentenced to hundreds of hours of unpaid work. I assume that the probation service is responsible for supervising them. Could I ask what projects are being worked on at the moment? And as our town is a dirty litter strewn place, shouldn't this work involve litter picking and cutting back overgrown shrubbery in places like the county ground extension, for instance? And I've got one more from no, that's about lighting. So yeah, on these two, these are about litter. Really.
Yeah, I mean litter. You know, I can totally join in and say yes, litter does demean the appearance of an area. It does cause problems, and you know, not only litter, of course, dog waste is another thing that I get a lot of contact about. And the reality is that, you know, I think probably 99% or even more of people in Swindon are responsible dog owners, and people are responsible with how they dispose of their waste. And very sadly, it is the classic where if you spoil it for everyone else. So some work has been done on some of those areas you mentioned. So Great Western Way to Mannington was completed in February this year. So there were some cleansing and grounds teams. They did the gullies, mowed the grass, and did some litter collection. It is harder on high-speed roads because you do need to do the traffic management, and anything to do with traffic management, some of the legal reasons around notification and so on, it does make it more expensive. But fundamentally, as I said before, I'm urging all residents to accentuate the positive. But of course, that means as a borough, we need to, particularly those people coming into Swindon, we want it to look good. We do have a small team who do the litter picks. Parishes do the litter picks as well, and there are a number of local residents who very kindly do litter picks. So it is one of those ones. It does require a cultural change on the part of some people around litter, and I think respecting your environment. I know the schools are doing a good job trying to promote that cultural change around respect and so on. I think one of the things I'd like to see, I saw, I think it was Maidenhead Council, they have got some special clever cameras, and they can put those up whereby they will detect if someone is throwing litter out of a car, and can then get the number plate. So one of the things I'd like to pursue is basically taking a really hard line. If people, you know, if you're going to chuck litter, expect to get fined. Now, of course, you know, we may have that policy goal, and then of course you'll see something in one of the newspapers about, oh, how person fined because they dropped a biscuit before they picked it up, whatever it is. But I think overall, I think where we do have problems with litter, we are just going to have to take a hard line on it. And if technology can help us to do that, then I think we should do it, because of course you want people to be respectful. I think most people are, but for the small minority, if you can't appeal to their better natures to respect their environment, then I think hit them the wallets as hard as we can. For the probation team, I'm not aware of what projects are going on at the moment. Obviously, lockdown poses challenges with that, but I know some improvements to the environment have taken place previously. I also know that the council ran a very successful young wardens scheme through the housing department, which was brilliant because young people were getting involved and coming up with projects to improve areas on some of the estates, which is brilliant. As I say, and lots of people go out litter picking. I do litter picking. We organise litter picking. It can be very disheartening though. You go and do a litter pick, and then before too long you see that it's there again, which is why I'm thinking that using technology to do the enforcement could be the way forward.
Yeah, you could have RoboCop out there. So
perhaps wouldn't go that far just yet.
So this is on street lighting. This is Wahida. She's asked,
Yeah.
Please can you put on some street lighting on the bridge linking Swindon to Wharton near Piper's Way? It's difficult to see in the dark, especially when my 4-year-old daughter is walking. It's also quite scary to walk in pitch black.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's asked about that. I'm trying to think which is Piper's Way. Yeah. Anyway.
It's where there used to be. It used to be what I think we colloquially called the nationwide roundabout, which that's now gone. So that's where Piper's Way came out. Yeah. So it's basically the junction for nationwide, and then going over to Whitchelstowe. So yeah, I sympathise with that. We funding for projects will be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Again, my advice would be to raise that with the councillor, and we'll look at that. Just to say on lighting more widely. I think everyone will have noticed the new lights, the LED lights we've put in. Those are saving a lot of money by doing that, and also it's reducing the carbon footprint too. I know there were some concerns when they came in originally about how bright they were, but they do dim. I know when they put one outside my house, for the first few nights, I kept thinking I'd left the light on downstairs, and going to check, but has got dimmer now, and you do get used to it. I think I've had overall positive feedback on those. So they are helping the environment and helping the council budget too.
Okay, and we've got a question here from Terry Dixon in Nine Elms. He's asked, there are lots of green spaces within Swindon, which is a good thing. There are many trees within these green spaces, which is also good. However, the trees need to be maintained, and this is not happening. I have raised issues about a lack of maintenance of trees at the back of my property and also near to my local church. The trees concerned are situated on council land and are in need of topping off. Yet, whenever I raise the question with SBC, I am told it is not a priority, and SBC do not have resources to carry out the work. I have been told that I can get a qualified person to do the work at my expense. If so, can I claim this back from the local council precept, or preferably there should be a rota for tree lopping, and when someone raises an issue, the tree or trees in question are added to the rota for action in a timely manner, not ignored.
Yeah, I absolutely recognise that, and I'm going to accentuate the positive myself. That the green spaces around Swindon, I think, are great. We have amazing country parks and also little patches of green throughout the borough, which is great, and I share the enjoyment of that. I also share the frustration that residents feel around the trees. Over in Nine Elms, my colleague Nick Martin, I have actually been on walks with him where he has been walking along with his shears, and he has done some cutting back himself on some occasions. So he's very active in that area. Coming back to the main point of substance, which is, well, how do we allocate resources for cutting back the trees? If it is an emergency situation, we will do those as quickly as we can. However, the demand for the tree work, there is a lot more demand than the resources, so we effectively categorise the need based on, so priority 1 is dangerous, priority 2 structural, potentially dangerous, and so on, down to inconvenience. So trees are assessed on a case-by-case basis. However, what I can confirm is that in the budget this year, we did allocate an additional £100,000 for tree maintenance, because you do have to get a balance with these things. But I think we probably were a little bit out of kilter, which is why we have done that. Unfortunately, you would not be able to recover the costs from the borough if you had it done yourself, because we would only be, if you like, legally obliged to act if it did meet one of those needs. But yes, I recognise that, and I think we all recognise we perhaps were a little out of kilter, so there were the additional resources allocated for that.
Okay. So let's hope Terry's tree gets done quite soon.
Yeah.
And now we've got 2 questions about drains. Mr. Walklet has asked, the drains never get cleaned out. They're full with leaves and other rubbish, causing flooding. When are the council going to solve this serious problem? So that's his question. And Dr. J. Godfrey has asked, why can't the drains along Moormead Road, Wharton, be cleaned? Almost all are completely full of rubbish, and people cannot use the pavement during wet weather without getting splashed by the traffic. So,
yeah, I think there's over 36,000 gullies in Swindon, together with all the pipe network, ditches and the like, which we maintain. And again, it is priorities based on a risk-based approach. So where you've got a gully in a critical risk area, and this would be one where there is flooding likely to occur, which is going to have an impact on the highway users, those are cleaned at least every 6 months. So those which are done on which present less risk, they will be done on a sliding scale, and for some of them it may well be a number of years. So the one on the A4361, I think it would be for Moormead Road, would be high risk. So those are done annually. We have 2 full-time gully wagon crews, and the activity is all recorded using GPS mobile software. So we're working on that. Again, it might be one of those ones with the trees where we may need to revisit if we have got a little bit too far out of kilter, but that is the way in which we deal with the cleaning of the gullies.
Okay. We're nearly there, actually. There's only 3 questions left to hear. So this is a question from Hannah Perkins. She's asked, I am pleased that the owners have put the building of Clifton Street School on Radnor Street back to an acceptable state following the interventions by the council. Could you please provide details of what use is intended for these buildings, and importantly for local residents, when the right of way up the steps will be cleared and reopened?
Yeah, so the issue there on the footpath is that I understand that the issue is that the retaining wall of the school itself was damaged when some of the unauthorised development happened. So that is closed for safety reasons. That's the reason there. So basically, the background to that, I think it's back in 2018 now. Developers did some work there. They didn't have permission, and there was a long saga around that. Work to restore the building is ongoing. They have repaired the pitched roofs, restored the windows, they've removed the hoardings, and I know they've replaced or fixed some of the guttering. So we know this is a building that is much loved, and that's why work's going on there. I just want to say very briefly on schools. There is a school over on Close in Upper Stratton, where the council itself is going to be doing some development there. So that's something we've done whereby we're looking to preserve the heritage and build some houses there. But when we're going to do it in a way, it's not going to make as much profit as it could have done had we not preserved the heritage. But I think that whole experience helped to inform our thinking as to what we could do as the council, acting as a developer there.
Okay, here's a question from Kevin Price. The question I would like to ask, what are your thoughts on the nursing staff receiving a 1% pay rise? I know this is totally to do with the council. He goes on to say the NHS has done our country proud, and it's and every year they get such a small pay rise. Why? The staff at GWH has worked that extra mile and more to serve our town, putting their work first, and also whilst also putting their own lives at risk. So that's from Kevin. Yeah,
I think everybody has enormous respect for the NHS professionals, particularly the nurses, who really have risen to the challenge of COVID, and they have saved lives. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Now, I do need to be clear that as a local councillor, I have no say or influence at all over what happens with NHS pay. It would be, I think everyone would agree that if the government can do it, that would be great if they could offer additional help. I think the challenge for the government is that, but if you give additional money for nurses, or what about caring staff or teachers or the police and other staff? So I think what makes nurses different is that, of course, they have been, providing the medical care on the front line. But you see, of course, teachers have been going into school on the front line, and retail workers. I'm sure we all remember when some of the shop shelves were empty. That was very dispiriting. So I think there's been a lot of people stepping up. So I think the government has indicated it is going to carry on discussions on this. So my hope would be that there will be the potential for the government and the NHS representatives to find a way to provide some acknowledgement. So those would be my feelings on that.
Okay. We've got one final question here from Ian. He says, you keep raising taxes and our services and Swindon itself seems to be on a decline. Shouldn't you be looking at what cuts you can make within the council itself, meaning the backroom staff, which has been described to me in the past as bloated by a councillor, with 3 people doing the job of what 1 person would do in the private sector, and therefore frontline services would not be so affected, and you will no longer need to punish taxpayers with such huge rises. Can you also tell me how many employees are paid over £100,000 at the council and what they do? As I know you need to get the best staff, but if we're paying that much, they're obviously not that good, as Swindon is continuing to get worse and worse. That's from Ian. Okay,
well, I think Ian, I would urge him to reflect on my accentuate the positive message. I think clearly he's got a number of concerns there. I think, you know, as I said, it's not the services are getting worse, is that we're providing more services that are just not visible to most people. And that does mean there's less money for other things, but we are providing good services. There are a lot of, if I say, caricatures or cliches about local government staff. You know, I see some of the jokes. They are unfair. We have 2,600 officers who are working diligently for the people of this town, and I mentioned the situations social workers have to grapple with. They are horrendous. They're things you just wouldn't want to do. There are, you know, there are, you know, lots of people were very happy last week because they got their school admissions, the place they want. We have a really diligent school admissions team. You know, our finance team, we do a lot to try to help people if they get into difficulty. So a lot of good work does go on. So I would challenge those cliches. To answer the question specifically, whilst I've just been looking, there is every year we publish what's called the pay policy statement, which sets out the different income brackets for staff as well as gender and so on. So that is all available on the council website. So just to answer the question, there are 7 staff out of 2,654 who are on over £100,000. So there's 7. And what I would say is that some of the jobs that they do, you have to have professional expertise and qualifications. So we do need to do that. But I just want to be really clear. The number of staff, most staff, so 31% of staff are in the income bracket 20 to 25,000. So 48% of staff are on under £25,000. And 65% of staff are under £30,000. So I'm afraid say that there's a full report on the website. It's all there to be seen. So the cliche of you know, bloated managers sat around it's just completely wrong. Most staff are on average or under average wages, and I say for some of the jobs they do require, you know, professional qualifications. If you think about things like the audit function of the council, we have an internal and an external audit. Planning applications is a technical area, public health, law, and on it goes. So, yeah, as I say, I get why people have strong feelings when they get their bills, but it's there to be seen in terms of what staff are paid. And I'm very proud of our staff and the service they provide. Of course, we're looking to continuously improve as any organisation, but these are people who are committed to Swindon. Many of our staff live here, and they want to do a great job for the people they serve. Well,
thank you, Russell, and thank you for talking to me today. It's been actually really quite an illuminating conversation, and I think you've answered all the questions as fully and as transparently as possible. which is great. So yeah, no, thank you for talking to me today.
Yeah, anytime.
I hope everyone that listened in got what they needed from it as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jamie. Take care.
Cheers, Russell.
Cheers. Bye.